Hey everyone, Darren Cornell here. Welcome back to my studio. Welcome to part 15 of the Kylo Ren painting tutorial using Vallejo paints. We are getting close to the end now. It's really getting there. Let me just have a quick check that everything is working. Microphone is on, music is on, it is recording. Should be okay. So last time we did the eyebrows. I said I was going to spend a little bit of time just finessing them, doing exactly the same stuff that I was doing in the last video, just a little bit longer, because that video had already been an hour and I didn't really want to go into another video doing exactly the same stuff. So I did that. To be honest, I only did it for about 5 or 10 minutes and then I was like, no, that's it, I'm happy with that now. So it didn't actually take me that long, but I was just doing the same stuff you were watching me doing. So we did that. Today, probably the hair. There's not much left on it now. His hair needs to be done. I need to darken his irises because we did them brown. We did them the colour his eyes would be if he had had a photograph taken by a paparazzi with flash photography, so you really see the colours, but that's not how they appear normally. So we're going to put a dark brown tint over them, a thin glaze, to darken them, but to keep the brown detail that we painted underneath. A lot of the time his eyes just look black in scenes in the films. A lot of the time they look dark brown. We don't want them to look black. I want them to have some detail. I don't just want black circles, even though some characters have that. Good example of that, Legolas in Lord of the Rings years ago when I started doing this, 13 years ago, something like that. One of the first figures I did after my Anakin figure that I have over there was there were some Lord of the Rings figures that Sideshow did. One of them was Legolas, and I re-sculpted the face because I didn't feel it looked like Orlando Bloom. I re-sculpted the face, made it a little bit better in my eyes, and gave him a proper paint job. Now, previously it had typical action figure eyes, so they were sort of looking straight ahead. It was a bit like that, and I wanted him to hold the bow and arrow and be firing. So I thought, okay, what do people do if they're doing that? And they don't look with the, if I'm pointing the bow and arrow that way and they sort of stand, let's get this sideways. So they'd had the body sideways like that. Now they wouldn't have their head straight like that. They would have the head like that and they would be looking out of the corner of their eyes. So that's what I did. But I've done several versions of him over the years for different, to deal with different client requests. Most people wanted him to have the bright blue eyes that he has in the films, but sometimes, and you see those in big close-ups where he's clearly got the coloured contact lenses on, sometimes you see Legolas running around and his eyes almost look black. They look like normal eyes, and that's sort of what eyes do. If you look at them closely, lit up, you'll see the colours. If you look at them, in normal light where there's a light coming from overhead or the sky or sunlight or something, often the eyes can look a lot darker. So I've done Legolas eyes in both bright blue and pretty much almost black. And they both look accurate. And they both look really good. So that's what we're doing with Kylo. We could do it light brown. We could leave them as they are now. I mean, that sort of looks like Kylo. But they're just a bit light for me because that's not how he normally looks, so I want to darken them. So we'll bring in the overhead camera and we'll get on with this. I think we'll just start with the hair. We'll go in and do some dark. I could paint his hair black, and obviously we did a thin layer at the beginning, but that's sort of faded down now as we've been handling it for the last 15 hours, 13, 14 hours, whatever it is. I could paint his hair black and then do some dark brown highlights over the top. I've got that one hair somewhere there that keeps wanting to come down. Go away. It's very annoying. I normally wouldn't know if I can't look at myself on camera because I'm seeing myself as Okay, hair, you win. So I've got to make sure I don't get wax on the head now. Okay, I'm rubbing my fingers on my jeans to make sure that there is no mustache wax on my fingers that then goes on the head. So I will also be careful how I hold the head for the following hour. See? Mistake. Shouldn't have done that. but I'm not going out to wash my hands because I'm in the middle of a video. I will be careful though. So I could paint his hair black and do dark brown dry brushing on the highlights. That would work. I'm actually not going to use black. One thing that I always teach is pretty much black is never black. On artificial things, you know, made things. I can't think of what I'm trying to say. Things that humans have made out of plastic and metal and stuff. Black can be black, but in the natural world, whether you're talking about animals or people or beards or hair or colours of an animal's fur coat or whatever, black is very, very rarely actually black. It's usually very dark brown, especially under normal light, which is how you want it to look. Now, you could do Kylo's hair black and do it highlights. That would look accurate for some cases, but it's actually really dark brown. And especially when you have light shining on it, that's better. So, we're going to use the German camouflage black brown that I use, which is my replacement for umber on my old MP paints that I used to use. So we'll use the black brown, which is a good dark colour. That'll be a good base. We'll just do that. Sorry, there's a thing stuck on the back of the head. Where did you come from? It looks like a little piece of paper or something. Hang on, give me a second, because this is otherwise going to annoy me. There's a little tiny, looks like a fleck of paint. There you go, got it. So we're going to paint his head. We'll bring the camera in. We're going to do it black brown because it's very dark. It's almost black, but it's not black. But it's not sort of chocolatey leather brown. We're going to use that. We're going to see how that goes. We are going to do lighter brown dry brushing over the highlights, probably something like flat brown or mahogany brown, maybe, sort of those colours, but lightly dry brushing subtly over the highlights. I don't want to make his hair brown. We just want to give something to break it up subconsciously that you don't even know is doing its job, but it's just stopping it being a big block of Lego hair. And then at some point we will do the, what are they called? Round circles. Irises. Oh my god. Let's bring in the camera. Just the quicker I get painting, the less I'm talking and the less of an idiot I'm showing myself to be. Right, let's change the overhead camera. If it's stopped wobbling now, hang on. Stop wobbling. Stop it. Overhead camera with me in the corner. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. I do not know where that focus is. Hang on. Let's fix this. Camera 2. Hang on. Camera 1, sorry. Every time I turn the computer off, it changes its mind as to which one is camera 2 and which one is camera 1, and it's really annoying. At the moment, it is saying that the overhead camera, this one, is camera 1, and I have to remember that, otherwise I change the wrong settings. Okay, camera 1, and let's get the focus not that far down. Somewhere like that. That might do. Something like that. Let's try. So, what colour do we want? German camouflage black brown. So you can see the difference there between actual black and the black brown. It's just a very, very dark brown. Now what we're going to do is, while I'm shaking this up, I'm going to put me back on the thing. We're going to do this black brown, which will work by itself. We are going to dry brush highlights with one of the lighter chocolatier browns. That is a word. And then at some point we're going to go in with black, but we're not painting with black. We're going to do a very thin wash of black over the hair, maybe more layers in certain parts than others. and that will just go into all the crevices and give it a bit of depth and a bit of extra detail. And that will help. So we will be using black, but we will not be painting the hair black, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's get this black brown. Let's get a splodge of that in the palette. Hang on, I should have... Let's go back to overhead. Palette. Splodge of black brown. So we are painting the hair. What brush do I want? For a start, I want to put... This is the brush that I was just using to finish the work on the eyebrows. One of my good brushes. Because I've got a super tiny brush. I think I've mentioned this. I think it was in this series. I actually do forget sometimes, so forgive me if I'm wrong. I've got a few brushes, one of which was bought for me by an incredibly kind patron of mine, which are super tiny, and I've used it a few times, and it's brilliant when it works because, I mean, look at it. It's like 1 or 2 hairs. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous in a brilliant way. I'm just putting the lid back on. So it's tiny. Now this one, clearly a much bigger brush. Look at the size of it. But this one, it's one of the good ones, the Raphael Kaczynski ones, has a really good point. And I've got a few that are slightly different sizes. It's got, where's the camera? It's got really good point to it. When I'm not messing it up. And the difference with this one is that because it's a larger brush than the one that's like 1 or 2 hairs, it holds more paint. So that means I can paint for longer before it dries out. Using that brush, I suspect that one will be better for oils, because I used to do oil paintings on big canvases, and I've done portraits, and I've done big landscapes and stuff like that. That's how I started painting. Bob Ross, my little hero man. I was watching his TV programs and I thought, that looks fun. I need to do something, because I wasn't working because of my epilepsy. Started painting on canvases, led to this eventually. So Bob Ross is the man. But oil paints they stay dry for ages. So I suspect that little skinny brush would be brilliant for doing details with oils. With acrylics, they dry really quickly. So this is actually better because it holds more paint, but it has got a great point. So I can do tiny detail like eyebrow hairs and stuff like that. So that's why I use that one. So I'm putting that one away for now because we are painting his hair. I'm just gonna get... Let's use that one. I normally, painting hair, would just get a big flat thing like that. No, you know what? Let's do both. I will do that to paint the large body of the hair, and then I will use this one. It's another Kaczynski one, but it's a much bigger one, as you can see, and I will use that to go around the edges because it's a bit difficult doing it with that sometimes. Oh, I just felt my stomach rumble. I must be hungry. I had a load of fruit for lunch. I'm trying to be healthier at the moment. I've realised over the last few years since I stopped running, I got fat. So I'm trying to be good. So I'm having a bowl of fruit, pineapple and apple and berries and all kinds for my lunch. And it's, you know, it's nice. It's not exactly a burger or anything, but it's nice. But sometimes at the end of the afternoon, I'm like, oh my God, I'm starving. But that's fine. I'm allowed to be hungry. So, black brown, we put a splodge down on the thing. Let's go on with this before I let it dry out. So that's the black brown there. I've got water and flow enhancer over on the left. I apologise that you can't see it, but I've only got a little area here that if I had an overhead camera that was sort of much higher, that would show everything, but then you wouldn't be able to see where I was working on. I need like 4 cameras. I need 4 cameras and a much more powerful computer to run them all. So I'm just adding a load of water onto this. There's a big splodge of paint there. So I should be able to take a fair amount of liquid. I'm just getting some flow enhancer in there as well. I don't want it to all be flow enhancer. That's what I used to do. And it made my heads sticky, but I didn't realise that was what was making my head sticky at the time. So I learned a lesson. So black brown there. That actually goes. This Vallejo paint is a little bit strange compared to the MPs that I used to use. When you thin it down, it goes a lot lighter in colour, and I don't just mean because it's thinner. Like the actual colour changes. It's weird, but that looked way too light for me now. Okay, plan change. It's allowed to happen. I'm putting some black in there. We're not painting with black. Come on, drop some paint out. There you go. I'm not painting the hair black. I'm just adding some black to the colour to make it darker. I don't normally do that. Normally, if I'm wanting to make colour more black or more white, I would do it with dark browns or cream or ivory or something like that. I very rarely use black or white. In this case, because his hair is pretty much black, but I'm just not using black, then it's okay to use black to darken it down to a much better colour. So let's do this. And I've got to redo, obviously, the collar as well, because when we were doing sort of flicking on the head, a little thin, super thin, so it doesn't make any difference. Paints are sometimes little dots of skin coloured paint has gone on there, so we need to paint over that again and just neaten. I'm making sure I don't touch the head here, but I'm doing it with like forced perspective. I've got to neaten that edge that you see there. That's got to be painted a bit closer to the skin. So let's do this. I'm going to do this in a way that I'm going to have to be careful here, because it's very easy to get paint on your finger and then hold the head and you splodge paint everywhere. I have done that before, and it is the worst thing, especially if you ruin a head paint that you've just spent ages doing. I mean, imagine spending 16 hours doing something and then you ruin it at the last minute. Welcome to my world. That happens. So, literally just painting this all over now. There's no fancy lessons here to be learned or anything. I'm going around the head. I'm not going super close to it or anything. I'm just taking it, being careful not to... There you go. That's where the focus was, wasn't it? I forgot I changed the focus. So I'm not taking it up close to the edge because I don't want to accidentally splodge on the face or anything. But I'm just making sure I'm not putting it on too thick. I mean, the paint is quite thin anyway because I thinned it down, so we're not going to block up any of the sculpted details really. But I'm making sure that I'm not putting it on too thick, but I'm also making sure that it's got a decent amount of cover. So that I'm not going to have to do 6 layers of it to get the right colour, which can happen, and I'm fine with doing, but it makes for very boring videos. Now I have realised I've sort of painted myself into a corner here. I was going to do this and have a go at making the eyes darker, and now because of this I have pretty much made it impossible to hold this head, which is a pain because I need to rest my fingers on the head when I'm painting to steady it, especially if I'm painting eyes. There's a lesson learned. Think about what you're doing and what you're doing in what order, and make sure you're doing it right. Especially if you're on video trying to teach people. Don't be an idiot. Alright, so we're getting around here, making sure I'm not splashing on the head, because that, if you're painting quite quickly, that's the thing that I, in the past, or even recently, accidents can happen. I wouldn't really think about it. I'd just be paint, and then I'd look afterwards. Oh, I would look at the head afterwards and see like a big black splodge or whatever colour it was somewhere. I'm like, how the hell did that get there? And I realised it was just because I was painting. I was just going blob, 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 and it flicked some paint from where I was painting onto somewhere where I wasn't painting. So I'm just looking around this. It's actually quite difficult to tell because, as you can see there, you get all the reflections from my light that's up there, and it sort of, to my eye, makes it a bit difficult to see what bit I've painted and what bit I've missed. I think I've got everywhere apart from the edges around the face. I think I have. I mean, you can always go back. It's an easy colour. This isn't... It was black brown with a little bit of black mixed into it, so it's not exactly a challenge to redo this. Now, what I'm doing already as I'm talking, even though I've got catch-up details to do, I really can't talk today, around the edges. I've got to do those edges where you can see it's the wrong colour. So I've got to do those, and I should do those first, really, to make sure that there's no weird blending. But what I'm doing before I do that, because I know this is going to dry, and I know this is going to dry a certain colour, I'm just adding it while it's in the process of drying, so it's almost, you know, it's getting there. Just adding a second layer to the underneath bits where we know we want that to be darker, because that's shadow. Light comes from overhead, comes down, so any underneath bits, especially on a big perfect bouffanty hairstyle that he's got, takes off his helmet and it's like a shampoo advert. With a hairstyle like that, all this underneath stuff would be darker just because of where the light's coming from. And you don't want it to be a different colour, you don't want it to look like a two-tone hairstyle, but just putting an extra layer on there when this is going to darken it some, and this will just darken it a little bit more, is alright to do. I'm just going to chuck that brush in the water, in there. I'm not going to fully clean it yet, I'll bounce it about the bottom of the cup, but I'm just putting it in there so it doesn't dry, so it doesn't ruin the brush, and also so it's a bit easier to get the paint off when I'm actually cleaning it. But I'll clean it in a bit, so the water will just keep any paint dry. Now then, sort of buggered myself up here because I need to normally put my fingers on this head to steady it while I'm doing detail work. So what I'm going to have to do, I don't like doing this, is just try and... here's another way I can do it. Let me zoom out. Where's my camera thing? Where's my zoom? Right. So normally, if I'm painting on here like that, and I'm doing details like I'm doing here around the head, or if I'm doing eyes, just so you can see, I'm holding this way in front of the face so I don't accidentally paint it. But if I'm doing around the face like that, or the eyes, I would normally rest a finger on the head somewhere, and that would give me a perfect steady... the distance between the paintbrush and the head would be constant, because I would be using that as a oomph, like a welded footrest or something. Yeah, it's like an arm coming off the head, and then wherever I move, this hand, the brush hand, is steady compared to it. But I've covered this with wet paint now, so I can't. So what I'm doing instead, I'm going to use the balls of my hands. I'm going to, you know, lock those together like that, and use that to try and steady it. It's not going to be as good as actually steadying it against the face, but it's going to be something. Do I need to... You know what, for this I can probably just keep the camera where it is. Where is the focus now that I've changed the zoom? Is it in the same place? It's about the same place, isn't it? Okay. So, using this little skinny brush... Oh my god, this is difficult. Oh, this is difficult. So I'm getting closer against the side of the head. Now, I can, and I do, and I probably will now, do this in a couple of goes. So instead of just trying to go straight away first time, right up against the skin, I'm going to get super close to the skin, but maybe go back and do it again. Oh, that's difficult. So it's a few tries. There you go. There's a way of... I was trying to think of a way to say it. So I'm going in and I'm getting it closer to where I need it to be, but I'm not feeling like I need to do it straight away, because I don't want to rush it. I don't want to... Ah, you bollock. Like that. Okay, here's a spare brush. Spare brush, bit of water. Let me push that back onto the hair and clean the head. Now, I know this is difficult to see. I've just wiped off most of it, but there's still a bit of dark hair on the skin, so I'm trying to wipe it off and clean it with water, dab it off. I just want to make sure there's no... Look at that! The brush held a load more water than I thought, and it dropped a massive drop of water. Okay, change of plans again. This is good lessons for you guys to see how to absolutely cock things up. Okay, so I'm taking a fold of kitchen paper and I'm just pushing it in there and letting it soak up all of that extra water that the brush accidentally dropped on, and you can see it's soaking wet there because the brush held some water up in the end of the brush, like this bit up here where it joins the metal. There was some water in there and it just went, dropped a load of water down, which I didn't realise, and that water sucked up a load of the wet paint and spread it around all over his face, which is very annoying. So what I'm trying to do here is just sort of use the water to soften the paint so it is able to be wiped up, but without spreading the dark paint everywhere because it's on the skin. And that's the last thing I want to do. So I think we're there. Let me just have a look. It might be off camera for a second. Oh, there you go. Gotta be careful. I just got some paint on my finger. Easy to transfer onto the head. So I'm just, because the camera gets in the way of the light a little bit, I am just looking at the head at where this happened, but getting the angle right so that the light goes right down into that crevice so I can see what I'm doing. And yeah, we're done, we're fine. There you go. So shall we try that again? I have no idea what sentence I was trying to say when that happened, but I know it made me possibly swear. I can't remember, but basically I accidentally blobbed it because I was nearly happened again. That's what happened. I was painting it and my finger slipped, or however I did it, whether it was with my hand or whether I was holding a finger against my other fingers, doing that, and it slipped and it went bloop. And that's why it's better when I'm able to lock myself against the actual head, because it doesn't slip. Right, so what I'm doing, I'm being even more careful now. I'm making sure that I don't allow my finger or my painting hand to slip. I'm not putting as much pressure on it, but I'm also, God, it nearly happened again then. I'm not going as close to the head. I will do that and fix that when the hair is dry. Oh, I'm just doing a few careful ones there. Breaking my own rules. I will do the edges of the hair where it touches the face. Afterwards, when the hair is dry and I can put my finger on that and, you know, lock ourselves in place and not make any mistakes. Now what I'm doing here, I've got my arms rested against the desk. Really not ideal, really not accurate in terms of being able to hold it still. But I don't want to interrupt the video by going away to, you know, put the hair under the hairdryer, put the head under the hairdryer and try and dry the paint. I just want to get on with the video. Here's the downside of doing videos where you are trying to do everything live. You sometimes come across situations where you're thinking, I really wish I could just stop and do that. And I could go away, dry the paint, use the hairdryer, and come back and do it with, you know, using my finger against the head the way I want to, but that introduces several hours of extra work because I have to take that video, import it into my video software, editing software, cut out the bits where I was in the other room using the hairdryer, re-export the video, create another video from that, upload that. It adds a load of time. I'm trying to do everything from this program that I'm using here, press stop, upload it to YouTube, because that lets me do more videos. And that, you know, look at that head, it's Kylo Ren. We haven't even done any highlights or shades or anything yet, but already you can see the difference. So that looks good. There are, if you look close, I don't know if you can see it there, I can't be bothered changing the focus, tiny little, what was not the colour, the grey, it wasn't grey, was it? It was just a thin layer of the umber colour, the black brown that we did, the first colour that got largely sort of greyed out by holding it. You can see some of that colour around the edges. Oh, excuse me. I don't know if you can see it, I can see it. There you go, you can see a bit there. And you can see a bit down there on that side. So I've not taken it right down to the skin just because I don't want to mess it up and splodge paint on his face. But I will fix that afterwards. What I'll do is I'll get the same colour, I'll mix the same colour again. I'll do a slightly thinner version because I want to slightly fade it from the hair. I don't want a hard cut as if it's a, you know, a piece of Lego. I want it to go up against it, but a very slightly faded change of colour. So I'll do a thinner version of that and just fill in those lines. I'll take them right up to the skin and I'll do that carefully with a smaller brush using my finger on the head the way I'm supposed to. I'll tell you what I'm going to do while I've got this colour, because this colour is drying, even though his outfit is black, while I've got this black brown, I'm going to paint over his neck collar thing with the black brown colour, and it's darker because we've got some black in it as well, but I'm going to go over that, seeing as we've got to anyway, and then if I need to I can give it a wash with some black to darken it even more. I'm not even, am I on camera? Well, I was, surprisingly. I wasn't paying attention then to whether I was holding my, you know, the head under the camera, and it turned out I actually was. I was accidentally getting it right. Who'd have thought? Ooh, I'm having the same problem here as I was having going around the head, trying not to mess it up, but not being able to lean on anything to steady my hand. Now let me just go on the inside edge of this with the same colour just to take it over the edge a bit. Sorry, can you see? Yes, you can see, okay. There you go, just so we know it is actually painted up to the edge. Now this top edge, how am I going to do this? Do I use, right, I'll see if I can rest my finger on that stick, but wrap my other fingers around it so it can't slip off. So I've pretty much got hold of that little finger, but I'm using that little finger against the stick to hold it in place. Now this brush is actually a bit big to be doing this bit because the point is very long and feathery, and it's a bit not controllable enough to do that edge, so I'm going to abandon that. That was a silly idea, Darren. What are you doing that for? Let me try and clean up that edge. That's already not as clean as it should be. I thought I could get away with doing that edge. I'm just cleaning up that edge that I've just painted there. Same thing as I did against the hair. Water, clean brush, wiping it off, just to make sure there's none against the skin. Right. I was trying to paint that edge there because I thought I've got to do something on the video. But it turned out that brush that I had there was good for doing points and a big brush. Where's my little corner cam has gone very bright. I think the sun has come out on through my blind and it's making my camera bright. Let me try and make it a bit darker. That's better. Hello. So I'll do that separately as I was going to. But I was trying to do that there, but because we were using a big brush, the big brush goes to a good point, which is great, but the point that it goes to is very thin and very loose and not very controllable up against an edge like that. Great for just doing things that like eyebrow hairs where you're just swiping lines, but trying to paint over an edge like that, you actually need a bit of a shorter brush that you can just hold it in place. And the longer the brush is, the longer the hairs are, the more you come across physics and stuff like that, where the bend of the hair can it can bend out of shape for what you expect, or it can flick against the thing. You have a bit of less control. But look, that's already looking good. We haven't even finished it yet. What I will try quickly, just because I said I was going to finish this video, let's just get this colour. No, too dark. I don't want to do that colour. Change of plans again. Let's go back to the black brown. Let's just splodge a bit of black brown on the thing. I mean, to be honest, it might be right. Decisions. I like making decisions on the fly when I'm trying to do a video. Let me thin some of that black brown down with water. Get it super thin. That might work. Okay, let's get more water on that. Let's really thin it down. Super thin, super watery. So this bit here is what I'm doing. See how thin that is? Really watery. Because I want to do this subtly, and I'd rather do it in a few layers than do it once and go, I've just ruined everything. So let me, okay, camera 1, and let's take the focus up here somewhere. So let's get some of that black brown liquid. Make sure there's no spare liquid on there. Okay, now I've got the same problem here. I can't lock my finger against the head. So I am just taking some of that black brown wash. This is too careful. This is too precarious, I should say. Where's the focus? Focus. About there. I'm taking that wash, I'm going over the brown eye. I'm not painting it black, I'm not painting it dark brown, I'm just doing a thin dark brown wash over what we've already painted to darken it, but I'm trying to do it in a controlled way. So that we still see the brown colour that we've painted. It's just darker. Now what I'm doing, that eye has already started drying, but it's still a little bit wet, so it'll spread a little bit, but not all the way through. I've just dabbed a second layer up near the top where it touches the eyelid. Can't talk. Where it touches the eyelid. it wasn't fully dry, so it will blend a bit, but it wasn't fully wet, so it's not going to spread over the whole thing. It will stay roughly at the top. So what that'll do is just make the top a little bit darker because it's a second layer of the same colour. And I'm going to let that dry, see how it looks. It looks okay in person. Can't tell yet. I'll let that. Where's the focus? Because I used to have it that the focus, when I set the focus to the furthest away, it would be in the right place. But now that I've moved the camera much closer to where I'm working, down here, I need to sort of manually adjust the focus. Okay, I think that those eyes, I should say, I did 2 of them, is quite good now. You can see when you look at it in the light that it's brown eyes with the circle, and you know what, I'll try and show you, but I don't know if it'll work because the closer I get to the camera up here, this camera blocks out the light because the light is above it. But let me see if I can. Okay, camera 1, where's the focus? So let's bring the focus right up, see if I can get up close. Maybe if I turn sideways, because you can see where the shadow's coming in at the bottom, that's the camera blocking the light. Actually, you know what? I think I can get a little bit closer. Let's be cheeky. Hold it near the top. Right, so you can see the eyes are brown, but they're darker than they were. But you can still see the shape, you can still see the pupil, you can still see the dark eyes. And you can see that they are darker near the top against the eyelids. I've created the impression of shadow there. And you can also see, while we're this close, the extra hairs and stuff that I did on the bottom of his eyebrows, by his eyes, little thin, almost grey hairs, because if you do them with the dark colour that they're supposed to be, at that scale they look too dark and too thick. So if you make them sort of a bit grey, they just look like really thin hairs. There you go. That's quite good. I'm pleased with that. Where's the focus? Where's the focus? Down there. So I'm looking at that with my own eyes at a normal distance, sort of 10 inches, 12 inches away. That looks quite good. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to let those eyes dry. I'm going to let the hair dry, because I can still see wet patches in the crevices where there's clearly more liquid gone. I'm going to let those dry. I am going to go in. Do I do this on camera or not? I will decide. I'm not sure, because it's essentially doing the same thing. But I've got to paint up around the edges on that head, and I've got to paint around the edges on that collar, and just take it up to the skin, but make sure it doesn't go onto the skin, but just neaten up that edge. I'm not sure whether to do that on camera. I will decide after this video has gone up, because there's no real lesson there. It's just me doing a ton of careful stuff and probably being quiet, because I'll be concentrating loads. I'll be doing that concentrating, tongue sticking out face. But you can sort of see what I'm doing. I'm just painting up against an edge, but it's just going to be me doing it carefully to make sure I don't mess it up. So that will either be on video, or when we come back to the next video, I will have that done. I'm not sure. But if I do, I will tell you what I did. So there you go. Let's leave that. That is episode 15, did I say, of Kylo Ren. Let me think back to the main camera. Let's get that out of the way. So, we've done the first layer of his dark hair. I know we did that near the beginning, but this is the first layer that's going to stay like this. And we're going to do highlights and shadows onto that. We've redone his collar, and we've darkened his irises. I have to think, every time I go to say iris or pupil, in my brain I have to go, iris, pupil, iris? Because I can never remember which one's which. So we've darkened his irises, and you could see then the eyebrow detail that we did. And in the next video we will do some highlights, dry brushing on his hair. We'll put in some shadows on his hair. I don't know what else would it. Maybe do like a thin black wash on the collar just to darken it a little bit. Even though it's really dark as it is, I might want to get it a bit darker. And we'll see how that looks once everything is dried properly. But there you go, Kylo. That's Kylo Ren. So, part 15. I've got 3 brushes that I need to clean before they get bendy hairs from sitting on their bristles. So that was part 15. Join me for part 16 and we will do a bit of the rest. You know what? The next video might be the last one. I don't know. The next video might be the last one. There will be probably, like, do I do pictures in the video or do I do pictures as a separate post? I don't know. I'll decide. The next video might be the last video for painting. We will see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, 15, 16 videos, that's often how long these things take. So that's about right. I will see you next time. Have a good weekend, or have a good week, or have a good day, or evening, or morning, or whenever you're watching this. Look after yourselves, look after the people around you, look after animals. And I will see you for part 16. Take care, everyone. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for watching this. I know you've got lots of other things you could be doing, so I appreciate it. I genuinely appreciate it. And ask me any questions if you've got any. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.